Hi. I left my hat on because I came in from outside and jogging, my minimal jogging, my invisible jogging. People see it as walking. I see it as jogging. Anyway, my hair was wet and flat, and I came in with my hat, so I left it on. Anyway, okay. So I've been contemplating. I was just kind of laying there looking out the window and looking at my perception of what I was seeing, but I was really enjoying looking out the window, and I noticed, of course, that I thought, "What am I noticing?" So I looked at the dirt on the window. Of course, I could see the trees when I was enjoying everything. I could see the space outside and the neighbor's house, and I don't know, I was just enjoying looking out the window. But then I honed in on the dirty window, the splotches, and how there was a film over the window that was kind of there. And and then there was the screen that had these little bitty windows that were pixelating the view. So when I was looking at that, I was thinking about how all of this knowledge are all of the things, all of our thoughts and feelings. The first thing I did when I noticed those different things about looking out the window was to compare it. And I I know it was obstructing the colors and the view outside, but of course I didn't know it when I wasn't thinking about that. So if you compare it to if you're an infinite being, an infinite baby, an infinite being that has no pre-thoughts and feelings already of all these things around them, then that outside view it's just there. And we can just enjoy the openness of seeing something that is, that's right here and right now, and just is. But as I was looking out the window and all the seeing the judgment pop right in there about, well, it's dirty. Well, of course, I asked myself to do that. In the first place, I was just enjoying looking out the window, contemplating. And then I was assessing this view from my eyes. So, um, then it started me pondering when I was seeing the comparisons jump in and my judgment and how everything got into a much limited view the more I sat there and judged it. Um, I started thinking about our sight and how we get so affected. And we can see so much of how it affects everything in our life. So I wanted to look at my mind and look at mind and thoughts and feelings. So when I think of the mind, I think of of the mind being thoughts and emotion because as you because the mind does is thinking and it lights up with emotion from what you think. And then there's thoughts and there's feelings. So I think of the mind as encompassing those thoughts and emotions or feelings. And then kind of because the mind kind of encompasses all of that. And then we separate it down to thoughts and feelings. And so we're doing all this so we can separate and see what's doing what to who. So when we think of being in a human body and have all these limitations, we can see the distance that we're creating from the purity of where we come from. So when I look at or I try to be in an infant's mind, you just see what is and you enjoy just the now of seeing what is and just being. And then I know Rupert has used this analogy, but I'm going to use it at this time because it was a good one. But it seems like in that purity of infancy, our first waking moments are pure. And I'm sure we have things that come from the womb, but I'm starting from just the purest place I can think that we begin and trying to be in that moment with that purity and then walking into the world. It's like Rupert put in this analogy where the prison door where you walk into a prison as you collect these thoughts and feelings and judgments and the experiences are nice, but it seems like we walk right into, and Rupert says this as well, into the time and space. So we're coming out of the womb and walking into time and space, um, where we're automatically limited. So we walk into that prison of a separate self, of a limited self, where we can only see what we're capable of seeing through our limited points of view. And um, because we're collecting thoughts and feelings, and we're collecting past and present. Well, we're collecting past and future experiences and judgments of those experiences. And we gather those up and we hoard them, actually. We just collect them and keep collecting them and have all this baggage. Once we get to a certain point, the baggage really brings us down in many points of life. and then we collect it again, and then it brings us down again, and then we collect them again, and we keep doing these cycles. But and we qualify um, the purest part of ourselves because the way I think of it is, um, I guess I keep repeating Rupert many times. I find myself repeating, and I don't like to be a parrot. So I'm just trying to think out loud and see how I would put it together, but I can't think of another way than to say um, that when we refer to ourselves as I, we can. There's only a oneness to the entire world. There's only the one thing that we emanate from, and that's um, infinite being. So when we refer to ourselves as I am, it's it's a reminder of who we are. But what we do is we qualify that with I am this, then I am that, and I am this, then I am that. And we keep adding all of this stuff on top of that, the purity of our being. Now, granted, we can't know infinite being. It's everything and it's overwhelmingly huge and it's everything, everything, everything. We can't even imagine. We can't even know that. But we are made, we emanate from that oneness, from that being, from that infinite being. And if you say infinite, you're referring to something else, finite. So you can't even talk about how large that is, that picture is of um, the I or the source of all things. So we say I am this and I am that, and we get all of this baggage and we get all of these things that make us qualify who we supposedly are. And that relates back to the other mm, video I did on identity. But this time I just happened to be looking out the window and just thinking about that and thinking about breaking it all down and my definitions of everything, the mind and thought and feelings and the now or the here, just being here and feeling the purity of not having any of that. I have felt a purity before that felt like I was just floating. Everything just seemed to be gone from me. And I just felt like it was a floating, loving space. Um, and of course, it dissipated because I added everything back and more, probably. Just kept adding to and adding to that I am this and I am that, doing life. That's how we tend to look at life and do life. And so recently, I have been enjoying life a lot more in experience from just acknowledging where we come from and just being in the moment just being, I am here, um, and serving the moment, and that's it. So, I've enjoyed doing that a lot lately. So I've been enjoying life more than ever. Um, and that's a qualification because that's a comparison. That's a comparison to ever. What does that mean? I'm comparing it to something else. Well, I should just be happy, um, feeling happy. But it is, I have to say, as Rupert has said, that it is an art. It feels, we feel like we need to share, and that feels like an art to bring something that you can't talk about with words. It's impossible to talk in words about this infiniteness of the infinitude of oneness, um, and how we can put words to that, how we can. I'm not a painter, so I can't, I'm not painting, but I really like to try and find words that put things in a way that just as regular people can understand, um, whether we're old or whether we're young or whatever, because living in that space, and I shouldn't even call it space, but living, knowing, knowingly, knowingly who we are, where we come from, and knowing that we share our being with everyone and everything, it just truly makes what you do loving. That's another thing. I was thinking about love, and I really do believe that it's not an emotion because when you're in that purest place of your being, I don't know what the purest place is, but I know a purity that I have experienced, but that I would call the purest place I have felt or in my experience. But when you think of being completely unqualified and being in that emptiness of infinite being, in that source, just being in kind of a meditative source without the qualification, you that purity is light and fluid and is expressing itself in a non-seeable way. It is, um, as light, or it shines. I don't know whether to say vibrates, or I don't know. I don't know what words to use. That's the thing. That's the fun thing about words, is we try to put words to things that we don't know how to do it, and so we borrow words from other people that we've listened to, or whatever. But the thing about it is when you're talking about it from a particular person with a particular point of view, there is a way to put words together so that it's more understandable to people that, let's say, think a lot like me and my specific circumstances or whatever. Or people might relate to another way of someone else saying it the way they say it best in their experience. And then another person says it another way, and that's the way they experience it best. But anyway, when you take everything away from that infinite being and sit with that purity, that uncontaminated, uh, perturbable, un everything. Um, that purity is light and love and airy. I guess I've said that before in my own experience. So it's as if that's the one word that seems to connect that very well is love. So because we're hardly ever in that spot without all the I am this and I am that, I do this, I whatever. And we have the past and the future and everything just all collected inside of us. It's a very rare occasion when you see that empty part of you that people might be afraid to see because people might associate it with dying, or um, I notice people all around, they want to do, and doing is good. Doing is good. But sometimes the doing is neglecting being able to feel that purity, which is when you're the closest to that um, divinity, or that inner, ex- that source, to God. Um, that's when you're the closest to that love, that purity. Wow. So, and that is where you see the conflict coming from, is when people are hidden from that part of themselves. I know for me, the further I got away from that, I mean, that prodigal son story is really true. The further away we get from that place, the more lost we feel. That's just inherent in being distant from your source. It's trouble in River City. It is when the trouble begins, when the hurts and the heartaches and the suffering begins. So, I see that all around me. I see that a lot, and it is sad. It is very sad. So, yeah, and I've been listening to a lot of different people talking. Rupert Spira and A.H. Almas. Wow, that is some talk. Um, so when you see these and Caldwell, Tom Caldwell, Rupert and I think it's yeah, Tom Caldwell, Rupert and Tom Caldwell with science and that thinking, all of them getting back to that very same source of love, but in such totally, totally different ways. So it's not to convince anybody of a certain way. It's really just to share that there is a way. There's a way for everyone, and there's so many different ones. So, and your own way, you can figure your own way to do those things like Almas has done and Caldwell's done, and Rupert Spira has done. So everybody can figure out their own ways, or I think it kind of speeds things along when you see someone or listen to someone who's very similar to what you've put together for yourself. If you've put anything together, maybe you haven't put anything together. And so listening to other people about these things, um, even with when they're outside of, if you haven't put anything together, it would be, good to listen to many different ways of what people come up with and see what resonates with you. But with Caldwell, it was, taking a very nowadays computeristic science kind of way, but he came down to the same point of cooperation and love is how this needs to be for us in this universe. And then with Rupert, it's starting directly at the source. And with Almas, wow, um, it's with experiencing and studying that, really looking under the microscope about your experiences and what they're saying about life. So contemplation, which all of them I'm sure bring up contemplation, but anyway, some are heavier in that. I mean, um, some people like to contemplate and study things, and they say it could be this way, it could be that way, it could be this way, it could be that way, and that can uh, confuse you if you don't have anything in place to any kind of model of some kind of reality that you can see as some kind of um, truth to who you are. So, yeah, so there's different ways of seeing and being and looking at these. Or you can And I mean this in a really deep way. Rupert says this too. Love and do whatever you want. But in the word love, it's a deep meaning. It's not like make love or um, it's about loving everything, everyone, and yourself, and everything, and everyone, no matter what, and do whatever you want. Because, of course, you wouldn't hurt anybody if you're living in love. You wouldn't harm the planet. You wouldn't harm anybody if you're being in love or if you're just being, because being is love. Whatever. Anyway, this has been a fun day. I'm having a very fun weekend and wanted to hop on because of the window. So, see you next week if anybody's there. If not, I won't.